Hey everyone, welcome back to Third Space Movement. I'm Dan and I'm super excited to share this next session with all of you. Today we are going to focus on the Frogger and how we can use it for a couple of different entries into some arm balancing poses. Before we do that, we'll use some of our other locomotion and animal crawls, the bear and the monkey, to warm up a little bit for the Frogger. So with all that said, let's start getting warmed up. First thing we're going to do is just start to shake the body out a little bit. So whether you just woke up, whether it's the end of the day, sometimes it's nice to just shake it out a little bit. Nice little way to kind of reset the body, kind of clear your mind at the same time. From here, we're gonna take those hands, we're just gonna interlace those fingers, and we're just going to warm up those wrists. So spending any amount of time on our hands, especially when we start to load them into arm balances, things like that, we really need to think about kind of preparing everything, all the joints and tissues in order to get ready for that. So I'm just going to change directions a couple times, just starting to loosen up with those wrists. From here, we're just going to start to circle those elbows, those forearms out to the side, and we're just going to change direction with it. From here, we're going to do the same thing with those shoulders. So we're just going to take those arms, start to circle them forward, and we'll circle them back. So just like we've always been doing, working that little bit of rotation at the shoulders as I come through. Good. From here, we're going to make our way back down to the ground. We're going to go into our tabletop position. We're just going to get into a couple nice easy palm raises. So the hands are going to be right underneath the shoulders. We're going to think about pushing the ground a little bit. So shoulders are going to pop up. From here, I'm going to press into the ground and just raise both hands off the ground at the same time. Same motion, we're just going to take the fingers out to the side and we'll lift those palms. Again, I'm trying to make sure that both palms come off the ground at the same time and then I keep all my control through the movement. Last way, we're just going to turn the fingers towards ourselves. Next movement we're going to do is just a nice little stretch for the kind of posterior capsule of the shoulder. So very similar to where we find ourselves, just crossing that arm across the chest. I'm going to make sure it's coming across the chest, not up here by my neck. So I'll think about keeping that shoulder down and away from the ear. We're going to do a little version though, where I'm actually going to start face up. I'm going to pull the shoulder down away from the ear and I'm going to roll myself over. So again, making sure it's coming across my chest, not my neck. From here, I have a little bit of pressure as I reach the opposite hand, kind of overhead, trying to reach across the room. Thinking about squaring this shoulder down with the floor. And then I can contract, relax, just thinking about pulling that shoulder down and away from the ear. A little bit of pressure into the floor with the back of that tricep. Should feel that stretch a little bit more. And then I'll just relax. And then again, contract, thinking about pushing into the ground. And we'll just cycle through that a couple more times. Good, and we're gonna switch sides so I can thread that other arm through. Sometimes I'll just start on my back, make sure that that arm's coming out nice and straight, and then I'll, again, roll myself into position. We'll make sure there's that space between the shoulder and the ear, back of the triceps on the ground. I start to reach that opposite hand overhead. We're going to press down, and relax. A couple seconds, pressing down into the ground, and then relax. Last one. Good. From here, let's come on back to our tabletop. And I can either do this from a tabletop position or from a full plank. We're just going to get into our scat push-ups. So shoulders are away from the ears, and we're going to think about retracting, and then I'm going to press up and away and protract the shoulders. So from the side, what it looks like is reaching forward, feeling the shoulders kind of glide forward, and then I'm going to pull everything back and retract. So I can try it in my tabletop position and add a little bit more to it from a full plank. So we're keeping those ribs in. I'm making sure I'm not bending and starting to arch. And just isolating that forward and back motion. Retract, push away, protract. So from here, I'm going to protract. That's going to be the top of our plank position. And then I'm just going to start to lift my hips up towards the sky. Push the ground away, taking that chest through. I can bend those knees as much as I need to. We'll just alternate the heels, taking one at a time down towards the ground. And then from here, I'm going to bend at the knees, drop the hips, extend up again, and then I'm just going to let the shoulders come forward back into that plank position. Into our A-frame, drop the knees, they're just going to hover, tailbone for the sky, and our plank. A couple more. A-frame, loading up, and forward. Awesome. So I'm going to make a little bit of space. We're going to use that same position, our A-frame, to just get into that bear position, so that bear crawl. So again, I can start at that tabletop and then press the tailbone for the sky. From here, I'm going to start to take those steps, opposite hand, opposite foot as I come forward, and we'll take our time nice and slow. And we can do the same thing in reverse. For our second pass, I'm actually going to think about levering the elbows back. So I'm going to get into a bent arm bear coming forward. So motions are the same, opposite hand, opposite foot. We're just going to load up that upper body a little bit differently. Starting to get ready for those pressing motions, those inverted presses. See if I can start to build some strength. And we'll go one more time in our bent arm bear. And we'll reset. So let's get into our next movement pattern. We're just going to get a couple passes back and forth, just in our monkey crawl. So we're going to start in that low squat position and reach the hands to the side. I can hop or float those feet behind the hands again. abs. Good. Same position, we're going to work into our low cartwheel. So remembering that we're going to place the hands and the feet as if there's one solid line that we're going to try to follow each time. So the hands are going to face the back wall, and I can hop right back onto that line. Hands face back, little hop. So it's important too that as I come through here, I let myself pivot on that first foot as it lands. Good, on this pass, let's make a little momentum. So we're gonna use that second leg, use it as a lever. We're gonna kick it out like it's a tail. So it starts off the same, but instead the second leg is gonna extend, it's gonna sweep the floor. So it just starts to generate a little bit more momentum, a little bit more leverage with it. So the next move is going to use that leg as a lever. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to think about staying in the same place with it. The leg this time is going to sweep in front. It's going to trace that circle, and as I come through, I'm going to have to clear it with the opposite leg. So how I'm going to do that is going to plant my hands so I can hop and clear that foot. So again, it's going to come in that wide arc. And I just plant the hands to hop over top of it. One more time. And we'll try the other side. So we're going to make that big arc, comes through. You might notice yourself kind of slightly traveling towards the side that you're sweeping that leg. So sometimes you can use that to start to move yourself as you come through. Same thing. So this time I'm not planting that leg. I just keep it going, kind of like a little propeller through. Sweeps through. Last time. So that's a super fun one that you can do to start to connect them together using that same principle we've been using on that low cartwheel, using that big tail to kind of whip ourselves around. So now we're going to go into some variations of our Frogger. Our Frogger looks very similar to our monkey crawl. We're just going forwards and backwards in this movement. So we're going to start off in that low squat position. From here, we're going to trace those hands forward along the ground. Once I plant them, I'm going to start to shift my weight so my shoulders come over my hands, and then I can hop or float the feet behind the hands again. So we'll do a couple passes to get to the end. Just turn yourselves around. For now, we're keeping those hips nice and low. As we do these, we'll start to think about the quality of the movement. So again, I want that element of control, and we're also thinking about landing nice and lightly, nice and softly. So we can also think of how these progressions are actually building some capacity for some later on movements, such as our arm balances and our inversions. So we're building a lot of strength through those wrists and through those shoulders. The more that we build, the more variations we can have in here. So for example, for this next one, instead of keeping the hips nice and low, what we're going to do is we can start to bring them up nice and high. And this is going to force us to think about having to shift our shoulders forward a little bit more and loading the wrists and the shoulders up too. So as I come forward, here, we're going to keep
the hips up high as we try to hop the feet behind the hands again. So it might just be a little jump at first, or we might be able to start to kind of float the feet up. So these should feel fairly taxing, fairly challenging. Take some rests in between. I would say kind of like 4 to 6 attempts or good reps in there is about where you want to be working. Enough that it's challenging, but not so much that you start to fatigue and it starts to affect your technique as you go through it. So we're going to go through another pass. I can, again, keep going with that hop. I can start to float. If I can load the hands up a little bit more in the shoulders, I can also start to play with some variations of, say, touching those feet together. Again, I can do that little jump to get into it, or I can see if I can control everything through that motion. So, starting to get us a little bit more upside down, a little inverted, really starting to challenge our strength through there. Now let's use our Frogger to get into kind of 2 more common arm balances. One's going to be a crow, and then the other one's going to be a little tuck planche. So both of these are going to kind of require us to, again, use that good shoulder stability of protraction, which was the top part of our scat push-up. I need to maintain that. If I don't, I'm going to sink through and it's going to be really hard to keep my weight up off the ground. As I do this, I also start to think about taking the shoulders forward a little bit, and that's just going to bring my weight, my center of gravity, a little bit closer to my support, my hands. So the first one, starting with those low hips again, I'm going to start to bring those hands forward, and then as I do that, I can bring one knee and then the other up to those elbows, find that stability, and then come on down. So you can play with how long we do that pause. It might just be a couple seconds. And I can go from bringing one leg in at a time to just coming in with both at the same time. So I like to take some rests in between there. Maybe start to circle those wrists out a little bit, reset a little before I go into my next set. So again, three reps in each direction is probably going to be enough. If not, I can start to take it up a notch and start to challenge myself with a different progression. We're going to do one more set, same way that we're doing. You can either bring one leg in at a time, or see if we can bring both knees up. And again. Good. So our last one, a little bit more challenging. We're not going to have that support of our connection of our knees to our elbows. We're just going to bring the knees into the center, into our tuck planche. So very similar in a way, but the challenge is going to be finding that strength and sending the shoulders forward even more so I can bring both knees into the center. Let's start off with just a little hop. So you can think of it like just clapping those feet again.
right into the center. Once we're comfortable with that, we can either do the same pass, or this time, I'm gonna see if I can pause in that tuck planche for a sec. Set. Last one. So I'll make it 3 really good reps. Put everything we have into it. So that overall should feel like a pretty good little workout for those wrists and the shoulders. We're gonna end off just shaking those hands and wrists out a little bit. You can start just working them back, kind of the opposite way of what we've been doing. So a little back of the wrist to the floor. From here, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna think about turning the pits of the elbows forward. I'm gonna hold that for a second and then relax. And I'll do about 8 or 10 reps of these. Feels all right. I'll just hold that last one. So you're gonna hold for 5 more seconds here. 4, 3, 2, 1. And we'll just go ahead and relax. Awesome. So I hope you had fun with that. We have quite a few of these little movement remixes now. So if you haven't seen all of them, go ahead, check out our playlist. We also have tons of tips with Katie and Alex for our functional flow yoga, and a whole bunch of new videos coming out soon. So go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any of those, and we'll see you in the next one.